I'd like to speak with you today about cities, the future of cities. That includes Thunder Bay, by the way. It's not just Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver, and Montreal, the big ones. The future of cities, green cities, sustainable cities. There is no other future for cities other than a green future. I began in the environmental movement about 21 years ago. I come from a family background in real estate development, construction, and developing cities. And I guess I can't help but look at an image like this periodically and think it'd be a fabulous spot for a hotel. But as I emerged into the environmental movement 21 years ago, it was really about saving rainforests, saving green spaces, and saving some of the wonderful green spaces around us. At the same time as the idea of saving the rainforest was playing out, it began to emerge in Canada about saving the boreal forest, saving huge tracts of pristine wilderness in Canada for camping and fishing and for the wildlife that's sustained. The Canadian icon of the beaver and the polar bear have become symbols of the environmental movement in Canada. And as incredibly important as these creatures are and these symbols are, they in large part miss the fundamental issue in my mind. They miss the fact that we need to start protecting environmental issues and addressing environmental issues where people live, where Canadians live. Canada has millions and millions of acres of wilderness, and our flag essentially is an international symbol of nature and the importance of nature. The irony in all of this, though, is that 86% of Canadians live in cities. We are an urbanized country, and we're part of what's referred to as a mega trend that's playing out globally right now, and that mega trend is urbanization. We're in the midst of what many people refer to as the urban century. For the first time ever, more people live in cities than in rural areas globally. And within about 20 years, there will be approximately 5 billion people living in cities, almost twice as many as currently live in cities. So urbanization and the future of cities will be the success or failure issue that we will be judged by. How we design and develop our cities in the coming years is fundamentally important. Cities like Toronto, yes, attract people's attention. The bright lights, the opportunity, the healthcare systems, the universities, access to friends and ideas are very attractive. And other cities like New York really epitomize this notion of if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. And it's really the heart of society's ambitions. There are other types of cities out there. This is La Paz with 3.2 million people, an immense urban sprawling city. But here in Canada, we have a different sort of experience that's played out. This is 1982, a lovely suburban neighborhood just outside of Toronto that has become all too common, and that's what we did in 1982. This is what we're doing now, today. So we've advanced slightly. I wouldn't say much. We continue to sprawl across our cities, sucking up the landscape with these cookie-cutter houses that are dehumanizing and essentially pushing nature to the outskirts of cities. This particular chart will give you a much more pronounced sense of how powerful this urbanization and urban sprawl issue is. If you look at Los Angeles, the second chart in, Los Angeles grew by 300% in its footprint. Its footprint, the spread on land that it took up, grew by 300% in the same period of time that its population grew by 45%. St. Louis, it grew by 355% across the landscape, and yet only 35% growth in its population. Cleveland always gets my attention at this one. It grew by 31%, a substantial growth in its footprint, and yet its population declined by 6%. The time frame's not relevant. It's the phenomena that's playing out that is deeply relevant. And the same, I know, is happening here in Thunder Bay, and it's happening in virtually every country in the world right now. Urban sprawl and urbanization is consuming the planet. We did imagine futures for ourselves, but we haven't been able to deliver on the true energy of the Jetsons and some of these other more fantastical ideas. What we've ended up with in many cases are places like this, a children's school ground, which essentially has pushed nature and the dynamic state of the environment right outside the space. It's more like a prison yard than it is a learning environment. So the idea of changing cities, in my mind, is really all about beginning to integrate nature into urban design, bringing nature back into the fabric of the city and rethinking it. And by doing that, the fundamental opportunity is to begin to shift attitudes and behaviors in cities. It's the whole notion of changing your environment in order to change behavior. Too many school grounds. In Canada, there's 16,000 schools, so much of our work is focused on changing the learning environment of children. 16,000 schools in Canada, millions of schools across the globe. All too often they look like this. They look, as I say, like prison yards, devoid of landscapes that are dynamic and changing. And so the opportunity is to go in and make change in this space. Schools that can incorporate nature are more fun to play in, quite frankly. They evolve, the learning is a constant, and children get the opportunity to impact their environment and interact with their environment in a very direct way. This is a school in Berkeley, California, an immensely unique school that's dedicated to agriculture and food. It is a gem of a school that has led change across the state of California and is informing thinking across the United States. This is a school in Oslo, Norway, where risk is not considered a particularly critical issue, but where the incorporation of ideas that spur thinking is put at the top of the charts as far as priorities. A project in Germany where urban agriculture is a primary agenda. We're incorporating landscapes that kids can interact with and grow food. The idea of changing children's learning environments is about informing the next generation. And our work at Evergreen for the last 20 years has been focused largely on that group of people. But more recently, our efforts have moved to the next stage. This is a site in downtown Toronto. Most people don't realize Toronto is quite as green as this. This is in the middle of the Don Valley river system, and it's a site called Evergreen Brickworks, an old industrial site that's being currently open. It's been 10 years in development, opened last year, and is being developed as an international center of excellence for green cities and sustainable cities. It was like this. It was an industrial site, like many industrial sites in cities around the world. A scarred landscape, a site that needed to be changed and brought into some of the ideas of the future. It sits in the watershed of Toronto. As I say, you saw the photograph of the Don Valley system. It sits in the watershed. We forget often that our cities are built on top of the land and that below our feet is a whole system of ecology. And the real thinking represented in this project is about bringing that landscape up, making it evident, and incorporating into the design of the buildings. But the project itself is also about programming and bringing active programs for the community. So we've moved our strategy from focusing exclusively on children and schools to incorporating the broader community, incorporating business professionals in our programs, family members, and general citizens in the activities on site. Gardening and urban agriculture is a fundamental theme of the project. But winter programming is critical too. So finding ways to incorporate landscapes and incorporating skating, for instance, inside the buildings. And this is an image of the interior of a building where we literally removed the roof and filled the interior with landscape. A little bit inspired by Angkor Wat, the Mayan ruins, where nature can take over our most grand constructions. So in the end, we've created a place that is a space for nature and people, the weaving of the two together. There's an immense amount of technology in the background on all of this stuff. It's not just about nature and trees and plants and flowers, quite frankly. It's also about strategies to address energy management, incorporating efficient transportation strategies on site, water filtration functions. So smarter buildings are critical. And smarter buildings are better buildings to operate in. They're healthier, they're more enjoyable to operate as a community within. The campus site that we have, as I mentioned earlier, is much like any other campus facility or any other old industrial site. So the opportunity that we've developed at this particular facility is something along the lines of what could be done in virtually every city in the world, including Thunder Bay. And in fact, it is being explored on cities around the world. The integration of nature being the big green bubble and blue being the cities was the real framework. This is how we thought about the project originally. If we can get those two big themes and then weave in a few other themes around it, that would become the construct, the thematic construct for how we'd program the site. People and partnerships have been fundamentally important to this project, very much in keeping with this notion of tribes, where we build a community around the project, people who buy into the vision and incorporate their ideas. We incorporated their ideas in the planning all the way along and created this community that felt ownership of the project. And we've created something wonderful, something that the City of Toronto itself puts forward as the soul of the city. The mayor referred to the project, not our current mayor, our prior mayor, referenced as the soul of the city, partially because of its history, but also because of what it represents as far as a future model for where the city needs to go. So now I want to move into some of the other ideas of what's happening globally. And what's happening in other cities, because this notion of green cities and sustainable cities is a very, very powerful international movement right now. Cities around the world are fighting to be competitive in this space. This particular project, Masdar, just outside of Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, is a city for 50,000 people, half the size of your city. It's an extraordinary leadership effort. It's in construction right now. Portions of it are functioning. It's looking to be a zero carbon site, zero waste city, no cars, all walking within the city. It's an immensely unique site. This is the same site during the day. Those big umbrellas open up and canopy the building itself. It recognizes as a desert landscape that it doesn't have the normal foliage of trees to work with, so they've created this canopy of umbrellas that open up during the day, mimicking nature. Chicago, a city a lot like Toronto in many respects, has taken an immense leadership role and has become the city in North America with the largest number of LEED certified buildings. LEED certification was mandated by the mayor about a dozen years ago, and the development community rejected the idea and said, no way, we can't do it. And the mayor pushed back and said, you will learn. And they did learn, and the city has become a true leader in North America around LEED's building design, and this is their city hall. Curitiba, Brazil, an immensely unique small city of about 1 million people that has integrated green space and functioning elaborate transportation systems that have changed the city in the last decade. They've transformed the city with the thinking around sustainability agendas. The High Line in New York City. New York City, if you haven't been, is a fabulous place, but this has become one of the gems. The High Line is an old railway bed that's about 35 feet above the platform of the city, the ground, and it's this ribbon of green that has literally changed by adding hope and a sense of opportunity to this whole neighborhood of the city. A leadership idea again. London, England, with the new Olympic sites that you'll become much more familiar with in the coming months, has led to the revitalization of the Lee Valley, an area that was highly polluted and has now become a truly green corridor because London, England committed itself to developing its Olympic strategy in a very sophisticated way around sustainability agendas. Singapore, a city on the other side of the world that many of us think, oh, Asia is not really making a mark with regards to sustainability. They're the ones causing the problem. Quite the contrary. Singapore is an incredible city. 1 in 10 people own cars in Singapore because policy has been put in place to protect the city against some of the challenges that cars can bring. Songdo, Korea. Korea, by the way, watch Korea carefully. They are leading beyond many, many other domains internationally. I think they're ahead of the Germans in many respects around sustainability issues. Songdo, a city for about 200,000 people, is being built right now, a true leadership city with regards to its sustainability agenda. Another shot of Songdo. Vancouver established with its mayor about 3 years ago the ambition to be the greenest city in the world, and it's become their brand to be the greenest city in the world. Well, Rio de Janeiro has recently co-opted the same concept, and they want to be the greenest city in the world. So these ambitions and this competition is alive and well globally right now. And then you get a couple of disasters like Atlanta that has no interest in this storyline and we will see its demise if it stays on the track that it is on right now. Cities that are pushing hard on the sustainability agenda are not doing it because they're listening to some hippie group that wants to see lots of cool little green spaces in the city. They're listening to the economists, they're listening to the business community, they're listening to the voters who are demanding a better city, a better vision for the future of our cities. So a lot of the work around cities, in my mind, begins with green space. It begins by incorporating green space in our, in our children's learning environments and in our public spaces, and trying to incorporate ecology, natural spaces, and functioning ecological systems in cities. It's an easy place to begin. It engages people in the actual process of participating in their city. It resembles this notion of an open platform in the technology realm by inviting people in to be a part of the process of transforming a city. So when you think about your city, think about getting engaged in this type of work. It can lead very quickly and be the catalyst for larger and bigger issues. I have had enormous pushback from different corners of the community. The real estate community who build a lot of those subdivisions hates many of the ideas we're talking about because we're pushing back big time against the notion of suburban sprawl. But the statement that comes back is that the voting public, the buying public want this. And so, my quick response is some people out there also want crack cocaine, but you don't exactly create a market for that audience just because they want to buy that. So we've got to find a way to lead the public as well. You follow the public in some cases, but you also have to lead the public's interest in votes. So imagine your city with nature, find a different vision, build a different vision, and it's nowhere near as difficult as it sounds, but it is the future. It's the only future we have, and welcome to the big ideas available to you. Thank you very much.